Thanks for joining us. I'm Mitchell Ringos. A multi-million-dollar settlement has been approved in the class action lawsuit against Ralph Rowe, Scouts Canada and the Anglican Church in the Kenora area. Rowe was a priest and scout leader who sexually abused young boys throughout the region in the 1970s and 80s. And a word of warning, some viewers may find this story disturbing. Lee Noonan has the details.
Survivors of notorious sexual abuser Ralph Rowe and their supporters gathered at the Thunder Bay Courthouse for the approval of the $13.25 million class action lawsuit. The suit was first filed more than 6 years ago. Representative plaintiff Alvin McKay says it was worth all the work to get here.
Still fighting, it's never going to go away, all the pain, suffering, traumatizing. And I'm just glad it's over. Glad it's over with in court.
Rowe was an Anglican priest and Boy Scout leader in the 1970s and 80s. It's estimated he sexually abused hundreds of boys, mostly in remote First Nations. He served 5 years in prison in the 1990s for his crimes, but has remained out of jail since, despite roughly 60 convictions. McKay says through the years, he's become close with the other survivors, calling them his bros.
Yeah, it's happy it's over, and everything that we worked hard for, we stuck by each other.
It seems unreal now that it's finally over and it's just slowly sinking in, I guess.
It's not gonna solve our problems, like what happened to us as kids. It's not gonna go away, like we still have to live through that every day.
McKay was recognized by the court for putting himself forward and testifying to his experience so that other survivors wouldn't have to. The settlement recognizes anyone who was sexually abused by Rowe within the Diocese of Keewatin between 1975 and 1987, as well as their parents.
The hard work has been done by Alvin McKay and others who have been supporting him through this whole process, including the legal counsel. And we will ensure that individuals, when they do come forward and make those applications, that they are well supported.
Through the settlement, Rowe's victims are each eligible for $350,000, depending on the specifics of their experience. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
A Manitouwadge man convicted of second-degree murder in the 2021 stabbing death of his younger half-brother will spend at least 15 years behind bars before he is eligible for parole. That sentence was delivered at the Thunder Bay Courthouse. 40-year-old Jesse Allen received a mandatory life sentence following a jury's guilty verdict in May. The victim, 18-year-old Wayne Allen, was stabbed twice in the chest at the family home in Manitouwadge nearly 3 years ago. In their victim impact statements delivered in August, the family said their lives have been ruined by Jesse Allen's actions. It was up to the judge to determine his period of parole ineligibility. The Crown had asked for 18 years, while Allen's lawyer requested the minimum 10 years. The judge decided on 15 years, along with credit for time already served. Charges have now been laid in connection with a dramatic crash near Terrace Bay last weekend, which saw a vehicle plunge in the Iguassabin River. OPP, area fire crews, and paramedics all responded last Saturday afternoon to the single motor collision which left a pickup truck on its side in the water. Nobody was injured in the incident, which closed one lane of Highway 17. OPP later announced that the driver, a 46-year-old man from Terrace Bay, has been charged with careless driving, failure to remain at the scene of a collision, and public mischief. He was released from custody and is scheduled for a court appearance next month. NAN's Deputy Grand Chief is reacting to the landmark $23 billion settlement from Ottawa. It came after the courts ruled Canada's child welfare system discriminated against First Nations children and their families. More than 300,000 people could receive compensation, including thousands of NAN citizens. Lee Noonan reports.
NAN Deputy Grand Chief Bobby Narcisse calls the $23.4 billion settlement monumental. But he says that while it will be a welcome help to many claimants, it could also bring risks.
We've heard some of our chiefs say that a payout of this size could be like a death sentence to people that still have addictions issues.
Ottawa has agreed to separate funding to support claimants as they go through the compensation process. Narcisse says NAN will be working with its communities to set up those supports, But he acknowledges that arranging mental health and addictions treatments, or even basics like housing and water, can be easier said than done, particularly for fly-in First Nations.
There's still a lot to do. And, money doesn't really fix everything. There's also those social determinants of health that we really have to look at.
In a written statement, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu thanks the plaintiffs for pushing Canada to do the right thing, saying, quote, "We will continue working with them on a historic reform of our program so that this never happens again." Indeed, for Narcisse, getting an apology and a commitment to overhaul the child welfare system might be the most important aspect of the settlement.
Never again will the Crown just take away our children from our communities. That they have to work with our First Nation communities to really develop a new, robust support system for our children, youth, and families that are reflective of their true language and heritage in moving ahead.
Narcisse says there could be many thousands of NAN citizens affected, each eligible for up to $40,000 in compensation in any of 5 streams. They will be working on developing a regional process to support claimants over the coming months. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Plans to build a renewable natural gas plant at the site of the former Nipigon mill have been scrapped. The project is still moving ahead with a possible new location in Herkett. Hopes were high at an open house held in Nipigon back in January. Lake Nipigon Forest Management has a plan to use wood waste to produce natural gas. General Manager Scott Rubin says their environmental assessment revealed widespread contamination at the former Multiply Mill site, which made it unsuitable for their project. Nipigon Mayor Suzanne Kuko calls the decision disappointing. However, she's grateful the company provided the township with a copy of the report, saving them the expense of another environmental assessment.
So it's a big blow to the community, but yeah, moving forward, looking ahead, and it's like I say, I've been looking over the report, and it's not like there's anything radioactive in the soil or anything like that. So there might be a cost to do that cleanup, but we'll take a look at what that cost will be and hopefully get that done.
Sounds like in the past they used to clean the mill out using fire hoses to wash all your lubricants and items out with all the sawdust that was contained in it. And so if it was like a contaminant looking at one like small area there, it would be easy to deal. But because it was flushed out over the area, it's kind of contaminates a big area of the site.
Rubin says while it's disappointing they have to move away from their first choice location, they're already moving ahead with the environmental assessment of a site in Herkett, and he's feeling very optimistic about that location. The First Nations Housing Conference was held this week in Thunder Bay, continuing its legacy of improving lives in remote communities. The 21st annual event featured a diverse program of workshops and training sessions. Josh Morano was at the opening ceremony and has the story.
The First Nation Housing Conference has played an essential role in addressing the housing challenges faced by First Nation communities throughout Canada. The conference runs 3 days, with day 1 featuring the opening ceremonies. Committee member Jonathan Gregg says this event is crucial to bringing much-needed housing to remote communities because it delivers insight to the challenges they face, and he says it will hopefully teach them how to build on their own as a community.
A lot of times our First Nations are bringing outside skilled labor into the community to build their houses. And with that, we need to start working towards to reduce some of that outside, not because of the great support that comes from there, but just so that we can start building an economic basin within our own communities and start to have that sense of pride that we're building our own homes.
Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hajdu was not at the conference Tuesday, but announced at last year's federal budget an additional $2.4 billion over 5 years to support First Nation housing projects on reserves.
Any kind of funding for housing is much needed, especially when it talks about housing manager and developing those skills, and anything related to adding more housing dollars, more infrastructure. The challenge is just the farther you're away from a major city, it's just harder to work, and infrastructure is just starting to become to an end of its life in a lot of our First Nations.
The event continues over the next couple of days, highlighted by the Builders Challenge on Wednesday, before closing ceremonies wrap things up Thursday afternoon. Josh Morano, TBT News.
And when we return, it was day 2 of the First Nations Housing Conference in Thunder Bay, featuring the popular Builders Challenge.